Usually, here at Central Point, what we do in the month of July is we kind of just stop and we just spend time talking about prayer. Why July? Well, July is the middle of the year. It kind of helps us refocus, kind of helps us just kind of get back to redirection, if you will. Not that we've got off, it just kind of helps us, just kind of refocus ourselves and whatever that looks like. So what I want to do, although we're not in July yet, I want to go ahead and start that series. And here's the thing, I don't know if we're going to stop in July. Because here's what I want to do, and here's my mindset, my thought. Like I told you, I kind of just took the sermon series. I usually plan way on out for sermon series, and kind of just took that through all this, and where we're at, kind of a culture, and church, and reality, and just kind of threw that out the door, and just kind of thinking that through a little bit more. And here's kind of my thought pattern where I'm at right now, is the fact that there seems to be self-help books everywhere. Now there's self-help videos. Now there's self-help Zooms. You can, whatever you want to, and the whole idea, it seems like anymore we are society and culture, and just allow me, if you will, and you can get on to me later on if you want. But it seems like we all have opinions, and it seems like our opinions are all fact, and if someone doesn't agree with us, or we don't agree with them, then therefore we can't have a relationship with one another. And that is part of culture now, and that seems to have made its way even into church, and it seems like it's been doing that way for a while now. Well, there can be different opinions and all that, but the whole idea is that actually through a relation, through engaging with one another, through a conversation, through actually talking, a lot can be accomplished. Not only in culture, not only in families, not only in our marriage, not only with our children, but also within the church and even with God. And what I'm starting to think through, and the realization is specifically in prayer, where I want to, we could dive into our prayer series and take this time, and we could discuss how do you pray, what does prayer look like. I could give you 5 or 6 different things, prayer. But I want to go a different way. The more you get to know someone, it seems the more freer and open we become conversationally. And it seems like we don't like to take the time to get to know one anymore. Even when people disagree with us, even when people don't have the same thought pattern of us, even if people don't have the same belief as us. I have friends that, in relationships with people that do not share the same relationship I share with God. Their thought pattern, their process, their ideology, who they think God is totally different than what mine is. But I still engage with them. And what I find is trying to find common ground with those individuals. Trying to find, where's the starting point? Where are they at? And yes, there's things we disagree on, but having open conversations with people, which seems to be hard to find anymore. So what I want to do in this series, and make a long story really short, where we're going to go with this, through this series, and not sure, is in our prayer life, is just really, I've entitled the series Pray, but actually I could just entitle it Let's Talk. Let's just talk. And I think God's just saying, let's just talk. And let's have a conversation. And to have a conversation, you have to start somewhere. And what I like to do, just let you into a tidbit, and what I like to do is, specifically if I develop a new relationship or someone I don't know very well, I try to nitpick and find something that we have in common. And once I find that common ground, whether it be through kids, whether it be through sports, whether it be a sports team, whether it be my family's been really involved in soccer, whether it be soccer, whether it be work, whatever it is, whether it be my relationship with God, whatever it is, once I find that, I will just pick that to death. And I will just engage in that over and over and over again. So whether you're online with us this morning or you're here in the audience this morning, what I want to encourage us to do is to see, okay, let's, in this relationship with God, wherever we're at in this relationship with God, whether we're struggling to believe in Him, whether we don't believe in Him, or whether we are trying to reconnect or we're just in a place with God right now that just feels like a sweet spot, try to engage in learning more about who God is. And really dive into this and say that it really is a conversation. Prayer is simply this. It's a conversation. It's a conversation with our Heavenly Father. We can create a bunch of rules and regulations, and even in Sunday school, if you had the opportunity at a very young age to attend Sunday school, and I've shared this with you before, but we're just going to kind of walk through this again. What do we learn about prayer? As a very young age, what do we teach children to do about prayer? You have to be what when you pray? You have to be quiet. You have to be solemn. What do you do? We teach them what? What do we teach children to do? Bow their heads and what? Close your eyes. Bow your heads and close your eyes. That's what we teach prayer. Okay? And no one talk right now. No one talk. Okay? Yeah, everybody, Billy, you be quiet over there. Johnny, you be quiet. All this sort of. Just be quiet. Bow your heads, and we're going to pray to God. Okay? And that's the way we're taught to pray. But then we get into what we call big church. And then pastors and preachers and all that start saying, this is a relationship and all that, and we're trying to figure this out, and all these different things from the standpoint. And not saying that isn't wrong, not saying the reverence part of that, and not saying that, hey, sometimes we need to just shut up and be quiet and listen. We need to do that in conversation sometimes. But at the same time, and sometimes, if I was listening to the song, not to degrade the song we just sung, but it said, I think the words were, and I'm just paraphrasing here, that we should always be encouraged when we go to God. How many of you are frustrated sometimes? All throughout Scripture, we see different people. If you're online, maybe you're frustrated right now. Maybe different things like that. We see where you're frustrated. Not every time when you go to God are you encouraged. And not every time when you leave the presence of God are you encouraged. In fact, that's not a biblical principle. When we leave the presence of God, a lot of times there should be maybe a discontent, maybe a fight, a battle going on, a struggle going on, some things we got to work through. And discussions and different things like that. So that's where I want to go with this series. It's just who's God? Who are we in this relationship? What do we bring into the relationship? And what does God bring into the relationship? From the standpoint. So here's where I want to start. I'm going to start over in Psalms 103. That's not where we're going to. We're eventually going to get to Psalms 23, but I want to start at Psalms 103 where it says, "Know the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We belong to Him. We are called sheep of His pasture." Now, is anybody, whether you be online, you're here, anybody own sheep? Anybody have sheep? Anybody been around sheep? Okay. Just keep that process in mind, from a standpoint. So what does this passage mean? What is this telling us about God? What we want to do is we want to discover just how much our God, how much Jesus cares for us. In other words, I don't know if you realize, but we are called, God, one of the things that analogies, and one of the illustrations that is given to us is the fact that, do you know what God refers to us as? Or Jesus is what? Jesus is what? Or God is what? The shepherd, and we are what? If God's the shepherd, then we're what? Sheep. How many of you realize that that's not a compliment? Yeah, we all realize that, right? He's not saying, oh, you're this beautiful little fluffy little thing, That's not what God is saying. So I want to kind of dive into this and see, okay, why are we there, and why is God where He's at? And kind of help us in this relationship, this whole idea. And there's a lot of similarities, and I just kind of want to walk through in the beginning. You can write these down. Some of you are going to be hesitant to write them down. That's okay. But let me encourage you. You can study, you can think about them, you can ponder them on them later. Maybe this is a billboard you want to put a bumper sticker or something like that. I am a sheep. So I don't know. But here's some similarities between sheep and people. Just some similarities between sheep and people as we dive in this. The first thing is this. Sheep are very stupid. Okay? Sheep are very stupid. Y'all thought you were going to come here and be encouraged today, be lifted up, and you didn't know the first thing you were going to be called, and I'm called it too, so just the thing we're stupid. Sheep are stupid. They are very stupid. For example, sheep will eat so much that they will kill themselves. Anybody experience Thanksgiving? Yeah. Or should I say, even right, how many of you have been going through this pandemic? You know? Uh-huh. Yeah. We can't really say much about buffet food right now, but go to the buffet, and one of the things we like about buffet is what? We eat and we go back and we go back and back. Not only are sheep stupid in that way, but they will wander off and find themselves in great danger. If they find themselves wedged between a rock, listen to this now. If a sheep finds itself wedged between a rock, how many of you realize, that sheep don't know how to go backwards? Did y'all know that? Sheep don't know how to go backwards. So instead, if they're getting up to it and they're starting to feel wedged or tied in tight areas and all that, instead of trying to back out of that, what will a sheep do? A sheep will continue to engage and go forward. Sheep don't know to go backwards. They don't know about that. They will drive themselves actually harder and harder because they don't know how to back out. So just put in big words. Sheep are stupid. Here's another thing that we need to know about sheep. A sheep is that they are fearful. Sheep are fearful. Oftentimes a sheep will become so afraid that he will run off a cliff or run into a wall out of fear. Harm himself or will kill himself. A whole flock of sheep can get so spooked by a little noise, by just a clap, by just a whistle, they will run off. Sheep are very fearful. So sheep are stupid and they're fearful. Here's another similarity between sheep and people. They are very vulnerable. Sheep are very vulnerable. They are especially vulnerable to things like parasites, storms, bears, all sorts of wild animals. Sheep are just very vulnerable. So, let me just stop there. You don't have to answer out loud. So do you see any similarities? Whether we want to admit it or not, between sheep and people? But here's the thing. Here's what God introduces to us. Here's what God is saying to us. God, as we're going to see in a minute, God's saying, but the Lord, in other words, Jesus, is our shepherd. Is our shepherd. Bottom line is this, and here's the thing. And specifically, if you've been around teenagers, young adults we all, or as we've all experienced that, and if you've been around them, one of the things is we think that what? We are invincible. That nothing applies to me. There are no rules and all these, no boundaries, nothing like that, and this whole society. But actually, when it's very interesting when you actually engage with young adults, when you actually start to have a conversation with them, when you actually start to talk, they start to open up more about that, and they start to realize that the true identity, the true ideology, the true thinking of love, the purity of love, the whole idea about living is the fact that although they will fight it, although we all fought it, although we all bucked up against it, although they will buck up against it, is the fact that they know they need boundaries. We know we need boundaries. We know we need. Because why? Because we all want to be loved. Whether you're willing to admit it or not, we all want to be loved, and we realize the part of love, the purity of love, is the fact that with love there is boundaries. And one of the things we have to admit that's really hard to understand is sheep don't do well on their own. Let me say that again. Sheep don't do well on their own. People are like sheep. Sheep are like people. We do not do well on our own. There's a bumper sticker for you, or a t-shirt. We do not do well on our own. Sheep need a shepherd. And what happens is we kind of have this ideology, we kind of get in our minds this thinking, and I understand it, and we've all, at some time, if we're honest with ourselves, commit that we see God way up there. If we have any belief system in God, we see God way out distant. We see God up on His throne. We see God, we've talked about this before, He's a rule regulator. He's waiting, sitting on His throne, waiting in heaven, whatever that looks like, because we don't want to really think what it looks like. So whatever it looks like, that He's pointing out to us, oh, I caught you, you did that wrong. Or I caught you, I did that wrong. I caught you, you did that wrong. And that's the way we see God. Or we see God as the great divide. Here, we see God, He's way up here, and you're way out there. There's this great divide, and we never can get to God. He's this great, huge deity, if you will. That's our ideology. That's our thinking. And it starts at a very young age, and we engage in that. And we present that, and we allow people to think that, and we allow children to think that, and we allow young adults to think that. And then what happens is, as we get older as adults, and then we get into our 50s and our 60s and 70s, and we still think that about God, because what? We learned at a very young age, God's way out there, and we're here. Yes, we do talk about prayer. Yes, we talk about worship. But either known to us or unknowing to us, that's the kind of culture we create. And that is not true of God. It's kind of hard to create a relationship with anyone when we see them way up here and way out there, don't we? It's kind of hard to create that relationship, thinking about that. So we see that God, or we have this idea of God, that God is just, either God sends people to heaven or God sends people to hell, and and all these different things like that. Let's look at the biblical thought. Let's look at who God tells us He is. Instead of all this ideology, and what there might be layers there that you're going to have to work through. But I start to, like an onion, start peeling away. We're all going to start crying as we peel it away. There's different things like that. As we peel all this away, you might be layers you have to peel away that you have to get through. Who does God act? It's kind of like the idea when we talk about heaven. There's a lot we don't know about God, but there's a lot we do know about God. Number one is this, or this ideology is or thought process, or who God is. The shepherd cares for you with His provisions. In other words, God cares for us with His provisions. God is a shepherd through His Son Jesus. Here's what it says. Psalms 23:1. 23:1 says this. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be. I shall not be what? I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything that I need. That's the first thing. The Lord is my shepherd. I have everything that I need. Kind of hard to find that in the world, society, and culture, isn't it? We go through life trying to find what? We talked about the difference between joy and happiness. We try to find things that will make us happy. Try to engage and see what I can and build up and what I can create and what I have. Whether it be through the different things I have around me, they make me feel more secure. But they never seem to deliver the results that we think that we should have. We always want more. In our jobs, there's always got to be more. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a desire, we shouldn't have a drive, we shouldn't have a dreams. That's a lesson series talk for another time. But at the same time, what's our priorities? Why those things? God is saying He is our shepherd. And because He is our shepherd, we have everything that we will ever need. When you know God in that perspective as our shepherd, all of a sudden we find meaning in Him and we find security in Him. In other words, no matter where, no matter what we're talking about here is when you engage with God, no matter where you're at in this relationship with God. If everything was stripped away right now, If everything was stripped away right now, would God be enough? Be careful before you answer. And a very, several years ago, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago, as we as a family were coming out of very, just a different time in our lives. So decisions I had made career-wise and different things because I saw what was going on specifically in a different direction with one of our children and different things. I just kind of, we just went through a really dark period as a family. And as the opportunity to come out of that, your perspectives change. And I had the opportunity, I say this because I had the opportunity to preach at a church, to share a message, and it was simply as titled, "Is Jesus Enough?" And that message did not resonate at all. So I'm hesitant to ask, is God enough for you? If everything was stripped away right now, your life as you know it, and we say, well, it is stripped away. A pandemic, I lost my job, I'm not a band, I've been out of work, different things. No. If everything is stripped away, everything was just totally stripped, is God enough for you? Because that's what God's saying. The Lord is our shepherd. He's saying, I'll take care of you. I will provide for you. I'll give you exactly what you need when you need it. That's pretty deep. That's what God's saying. Not only is God saying that to us, but He's also saying that as the shepherd, what does the shepherd do? A shepherd calms the sheep with his presence. When a shepherd is overseeing his flock, there's a sense of calmness that the shepherd wants and desires to bring over his flock, desires to bring over the sheep. And that's the exact same thing. That's what God is referring to when God talks about this. This idea that we see in Psalms 23, verses 2 and 3. It says, the good shepherd makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. And He restores my soul. Now, that just sounds like a beautiful poetry, if you will, just beautiful language that's been written, that's out there. But what does all this mean to us? There's a lot more to that. See, sheep don't like to lie down. Actually, it's not that they don't like to lie down. It's that sheep are usually afraid to lie down. Why would a sheep be afraid to lie down? Because they're like us, we're like them. Because of the insecurities. Sheep also will not lie down until they are well fed, which is another relationship between people and sheep. A lot of us, after we eat this afternoon, what's going to happen? Some of you right now, you had a really good breakfast, you come in here, I start to preach, and it's like, it's okay. Really, it does not bother me at all. If you get to leave out of here refreshed and renewed, that is fine. Some of you this afternoon, though, you will have a good lunch. You'll sit out on your patio or your deck or whatever, and you will just all of a sudden be trying to engage in a conversation. Next thing you know, you'll be out like a light. See, shepherds provide provision for sheep. Sheep also won't lie down unless they have had something to drink. Where God says He leads us beside quiet waters, a sheep will not drink from running water. Why? Because they get scared of running water. So the shepherd leads the sheep to what? Leads the sheep to water that's quiet. Sheep will not lie down whenever there is a relation. Get this. Sheep will not lie down whenever there's relational tension. Among others within the herd. See, sheep fight just like people do. Sheep will actually do something. They will actually butt their heads together. And they will ram one another. And they kind of have this kind of totem pole thing, if you will. Who's higher on the totem pole? And they will butt heads till one of them kind of, either they kill, one kills the other, or they just kind of go back. But the shepherd steps in. When the shepherd shows up, the good shepherd, he brings calm, he brings a sense of assurance to a relationship or to the relationships. There's a calmness that comes over the herd. I would dare say probably this morning that there's probably at least one of you in the audience, maybe more, that are stressed right now. For whatever reason. You're just stressed. Maybe you woke up this morning and you're stressed with it. Maybe you're stressed because of your schedule, whatever it is. What God is saying as the shepherd, what He's saying, when we allow Him to step in, when we allow Him to be the good shepherd, what He says He is, when we allow Him to be, His presence can give calmness. It can. See, He wants to help us lie down in green pastures. He wants to lead us beside quiet waters. He wants to restore our soul. Philippians 4, verses 6 and 7. And present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. See, when the shepherd is around, guess what sheep can do? They can lie down. They can lie down. They can rest. But then there's something else about this shepherd. A shepherd, when he's with his flock, a flock is comforted with his presence. There's comfort that comes about with the presence of the shepherd. He brings comfort. Psalms 23 verse 4 says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Because God says, but why did it say that? Because it says that you are with me. The Bible says, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. It's so interesting, when a shepherd takes his staff, what does he do? A shepherd can do multiple things. He can rescue a sheep. Say a sheep is kind of got out of way, is getting stuck. You remember I told you they won't back out. So if a shepherd can help them kind of back them out, kind of help them move them out. Maybe they've got into a rough area. Maybe they kind of, went down a wrong path and kind of hanging out on a ledge. A shepherd can use the end of his staff to kind of pull them back. But one of the things that sheep really like, the shepherd will do, is a shepherd will take his staff, and he will, our dog Maddox, and no sooner than I come around, and even when Jen is there, when our dog Maddox, he does this almost practical with anyone, but especially me, his legs go up in the air, and he just wants you to rub his back, or his belly. He loves to have his belly rubbed. Loves that. He'll sit for hours. He's such a spoiled dog. He's been really upset this past week because he had his own little love seat thing, this thing that we had that no one would sit on because he used to sit on it. So it just became his. I'm thinking a dog has got his own love seat to sit on, And we got rid of it. We put it out for the trash to pick up and walking around. He's trying to find things to lay down on now, different stuff like that. But he loves you to pet him. He loves you to rub him. There's a sense of calmness that comes over him. The shepherd comforts sheep. The shepherd, God, wants to comfort us. Look what it says in verses 5 and 6. It says, you anoint my head with oil. Now that sounds really weird. What, God anoint our heads with oil? Listen to this. He says, 5 says, you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, what in the world does that mean? In perspective. What does it mean when he says he anoints my head with oil? Well, if you remember, I talked about that one of the things that the sheep are very, a lot of things that they are, whether it be wild animals, and I mentioned parasites. And parasites can be a hindrance to sheep, and specifically flies. How many of you heard this before about flies? What flies will do to sheep? Well, flies, they'll buzz around sheep and all this sort of things, but eventually, if what they will do is they will make their way into a sheep's ears. And over the course of time, the flies will lay their eggs, and later those eggs will hatch, and the little baby parasites will actually crawl up into the head of the sheep. Anybody ready to eat now? And literally will buzz around inside their heads. And it will drive them crazy. Some even to the place of death. Because they get so just that they will run off a cliff, they'll bang their head up trying to get it to stop. It's amazing what little things will get to us. Think about flies. These little things. Picnics, different things. I hate flies. Can't stand. Don't like to be around flies. Yes, God does have a purpose for them, but I don't like to be around them. Do not like to be around flies at all. But here's what takes place. Here's what a shepherd will do. Here's what I mean by anoint with oil. See, a shepherd will come along, and he will take the oil, and it was this oil that will be mixed, an oil that would be mixed with sulfur. And he would actually anoint the head of that sheep with oil. And not only is there a sort of, if you will, a spiritual symbol there, but it's also very practical. It formed a soothing feeling, and it was like if you will, an insect repellent to sheep. In other words, the shepherd again, I'll take care of you. I'll protect you. I'll provide for you. And then he goes on to say, your cup will overflow. And what does this mean? What does this mean to us? See, here's what will happen. It's kind of hard for us to talk about this in the pandemic now, going and visiting someone. We kind of opened up a little bit and getting together, more closer relationships, and kind of, getting together with family and different stuff. But that's kind of hard to think about. But here's what will happen from that standpoint. Let's say, for instance, let's just say, for instance, this side of the room over here is they have invited this side of the room to come over. And you have your herd of sheep, and you all take care of your sheep and all that. And we're over here on our farm or pastures or whatever, and we take care of our sheep, and you all invited us over to dinner. And we come over to your house, and we come all the way over here, and y'all, I can't do it, but I could have, y'all just move over here and sit down right over here. And you can kind of see the illustration if you want to on video, of those that are watching online with us. But as you think of it, and you say, and you pour us something to drink. And our cup gets down, if you kind of go to a restaurant, a good waitress or waiter, what do? That glass gets about half full, even half full, they just keep pouring it, that's what, from the standpoint of that. It's kind of like, okay, they pour, you guys over here, you're taking care of us, we have amazing dinner prepared for us, we're eating, you keep pouring our food and all that. As long as you keep giving us something to drink, we know we're welcome to stay. But when you cut off the drink, we know it's time for us to leave. We have to go back home. It's kind of like the pineapple philosophy. You ever seen the pineapple? Isn't the pineapple? Am I correct on it? Put the pineapple up on the up out in front. As long as the pineapple stays there, you're welcome to stay. If the pineapple goes in, then you if they cut the pineapple, you can spend the night. From a standpoint. That's not right, is it? It just sounded good. Same concept. It would work from that standpoint. That's what we mean by the cup overfloweth. Is that I allow ourselves from the standpoint that our cup just overflows in such a way. You know what happens when our cup overflows? Even unbeknownst to us, it affects the people around us. When we allow God to pour into us, and our cup starts to overflow, and we allow God to pour into us even more and more, then it affects the people around us, even though we don't even realize. See, as long as our cup is full, what? As long as our cup is full, we're in the presence of God. My cup overflows, and I will dwell in the house forever and ever. Who are you allowing to pour into your cup? Who are you allowing to pour in your cup? Who are you allowing to pour into you? Are you allowing work to pour into you? Are you allowing family to pour into you? Who are you allowing to pour into you? See, in this society and culture where, we have all these help books. We have help books on telling us how, relationally, how to help us in our marriages. And I'm not saying those aren't wrong. There's a lot of good in all that stuff. There's how to pray and all that. Why do we have all this help stuff? Because we've stopped. I'm not saying it's bad, but we've stopped. We've just stopped talking. Stopped communicating. Stopped engaging. And I think that's the same way a lot of times with God. I'm not saying that, for some, maybe for you and your personality, maybe you need those. And I'm not saying those things are bad. And, those are a time and a place. But the realization of who God is in this relationship. And God is, although He is in heaven, He is right here, right now, in this place. And I realize that's hard for us to wrap our minds around. But if we will allow Him to fill our cups, if we will allow Him to pour into us, if we will allow Him to rub our bellies, if you will, when all the craziness and everything is going on around us, and we're being tugged in all these different ways, if we will just allow Him to anoint our heads with His oil. Just a thought. Will you stand with me? Let's pray. Our Heavenly Father, I thank You so much for the opportunity and privilege just to be in Your presence this morning. God, I thank You for the opportunity just to spend time with You. May You lead us. May You guide us. May we, God, we all step into Your presence and walk in Your presence in different ways with different thoughts and different experiences, whether it be those online, whether it be those here in this place this morning. God, I just pray that, and I ask, and kind of a challenge, if you will, that each one of us, myself and all of us, will allow You to meet us where we're at. Maybe we need to evaluate our expectations of ourselves, maybe our expectations that we have of You, and maybe the expectations we have of others, specifically maybe within the church. We need to reevaluate those expectations and allow You to speak to us, allow You to give us the comfort, allow You to give us the assurance and the understanding that You so desire to give to us. God, I thank You again for the opportunity that we have just to remember who You are as God. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.